come to the Indianapolis NFL Scouting Combine, there are two things that you have to do. You've got to have the shrimp cocktail at Elmo's.
Well,
if you're lucky enough.
I can't do that. I can't do that.
If you're lucky enough.
I don't like
you
to
can
break
do this
out
one.
in a sweat when I'm eating.
Me either. I almost died there.
Jimmy was sweating last night from the shrimp cocktail.
And the other thing that you want to do, you aspire to do, is talk to this man, the great Greg Cosell.
That's
It's
the
great
highlight.
seeing you,
This is
sir.
why we come.
That's why we come.
That's why we
For
come
this
to Indy.
conversation. Where does, in terms of the exhaustive prep that you do for a draft class, where does the combine sit for you in terms of getting that part done, the build-up to the draft?
It's an interesting question because obviously I go into the workout, so I see guys work out, and there's a value in that for me, obviously. But for me, what the combine is, because I'm always seeking to learn more and more, it's more about talking with coaches, GMs. I had a great lunch yesterday with a DC in the league. He gave me 3.5 hours. Now I've known him for years, but still 3.5 hours is a lot of time.
Yeah.
And we were just talking ball. And, I'm just trying to learn. I'm talking to him about, what offenses give him trouble. What are the things on offense that give you trouble? Where do you see the league going? I'm just trying to learn, because then when I go watch tape, I see it with a different eye. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Because, look, obviously I'm sitting at NFL Films. I've got my whole setup. I watch tape. I don't get to talk to players. I don't, I'm not in meetings of teams when they're game planning or doing their work. So I'm trying to get a bigger picture of how coaches who live and die with this. I mean, fortunately, I don't get fired if, a team loses, but I'm trying to learn more and more every single year. So for me, the combine is more about that than seeing what a guy's 40-yard dash time is.
Yeah.
For people who don't understand watching tape, it's a silent endeavor.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in my mind, when you're talking about that, you're always seeking to have the new voice as you're watching the
Correct.
tape guide you through what you're seeing. And so getting that time with the DC, that's giving, now when you watch something, you're hearing that discussion.
Yeah, we talked about some teams, some really good offenses in the league, and what makes them difficult to defend, and he just talked to me about and how you have to do certain things with your front and how that impacts then how you play on the back end, and it just gives me more information, and that's to me it's always a quest for learning more and more. Look, I've been doing this a long time. Nathan, I've known for a long time. He knows that I don't really talk about myself. I'm a grinder.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot because this is what I do. I literally watch tape every single day. I mean,
that's what you've dedicated yourself to.
That's what I do. But there's always way more to learn, and that's the way I feel. When I watch tape, I always feel like if a coach was sitting here, he'd point out 10 things that I'm missing, and that's the way that's sort of the way I watch tape. It's not like,
Well,
oh man,
how the
I know
heck are
everything.
the rest of us are supposed to? How the heck
just
are we
gonna
supposed
say-
to know anything?
Right.
So we're missing a million things. You got it down to 10. That's big winning.
It's an incredible lesson in that, though.
Oh,
of
yeah.
For the kids, for the people out there listening, because you are the dean of all of this, and the idea that you come here with this appetite to get smarter every year.
That's
you
what
have
it's all
to keep
about.
doing it.
Yeah.
I kind of picture, a blooming onion, right? And you're trying to get through layer after layer of that onion to distill it down to, okay, what's happening now? Because, by the way, watching tape, I remember we were talking last year about quarterbacks. We were talking Teddy Bridgewater 2014. That position has changed so much.
Oh.
So the way you watch tape in 2014 or what the NFL was or what they wanted out of certain positions or what defenses were trying to do or what offenses were trying to attack, it's like a different language.
No, and the game constantly evolves, and you've got to watch tape and see it evolve and, grow with the game. Sometimes I grow quick with the game. Sometimes I'm stubborn, and, you stick to what you've believed for years. But you just keep trying to grow and get better and see it differently. And, by the way, I have no problem admitting if I don't know something. I have no problem with that because there's certain things you can't possibly know, which is why I never talk about, like, game plans and play calls because you don't know what goes into all that.
Yeah.
You'd have to be in their meetings all week to know that.
Sure.
And I'm not in their meetings. So, in fact, Matt Hasselbeck, who I've known for years, he said to me a couple of years ago, he said, one reason I respect you so much, which actually tells me that you know a lot, is you're more than willing to say that you don't know something.
Yeah.
Because you just can't know everything.
Right.
How could you?
And it's important to know what you don't know.
Right.
And then you can seek it out. You were talking about the combine and your quest for knowledge. And, talking to you was a part of my quest for knowledge every year. And, we had
appreciate
the
great
talk last year, me, you, and Charles, when we were talking about quarterbacks,
that was,
which unfortunately turned out to be a little more prescient than I would have liked it to have been in retrospect. But, Todd was just sitting here with us, the new head coach of the Browns, Todd Monken. The people here, this is a special event because everybody's here.
Right.
You want to talk to, now some coaches, now Sean McVay doesn't come, but for the most part, you want to talk to every coach in the NFL, they're here. You want to talk to every GM in the NFL, they're here. The people who have made their lives, dedicated their lives to football in other capacities like yourself are here. This is, I call it kind of football Disneyland, if that's what you're into.
Right.
And that's what's so cool. It's the people, the connections, running into you at high velocity, and we get to shoot the BS for a second about a great many things.
And by the way, sometimes you see someone and you have an 8-minute conversation because that's all, it works out, and you just hear something from a coach. It resonates in a totally different way, and you go, wow, I just really learned something. Very often that happens to me is a coach says something, and I say, I knew that, but he just said it in a way that made me think about it differently.
Yeah.
And, that's, to me, that's great.
When you think of all the years that you've watched, and we just had Todd here, which kind of dovetails into this, as you watched his Ravens operation offensively, what stood out to you in terms of this is what he's going to bring to Cleveland? Obviously, special player in Lamar, and that's a part of it, but two of Lamar's best years were while he was there.
It's funny you say that because I certainly don't know Todd Monken, and I don't know what's in his head, and I certainly, don't know the relationship that he had with Lamar. You'd have to be there to know that. But here's my sense, and I could be 1,000% wrong. I think that he limited a lot of the things he would really like to do because I think Lamar was extremely comfortable playing out of the big personnel package with Patrick Ricard. And at some point, you have to play to what your quarterback is comfortable with.
He says that. That's what it starts with. Understanding your quarterback, what he does well, what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are, and then you build your offense from there.
Right. And again, this is just – obviously, I don't know Lamar Jackson either. So this is just my sense from watching tape of the Ravens when he was the coordinator for 2-3 years, whatever it was.
3 years, yeah.
And my sense is that he would like to play more out of what we call 11 personnel, meaning 1 back and 3 wide, but that Lamar was really comfortable playing with Ricard, who played probably, 35% of their snaps, playing out of heavier packages. And when all's said and done, you play offense to your quarterback. If your quarterback's not comfortable, you're not going to have a good offense.
Yeah.
So, again, we have no idea what he's going to do with the Browns because, at this point we don't know what their personnel will necessarily be. But I think in an ideal world, he would like to play more with 3 wide receivers on the field. That's my sense.
Yeah.
Is there something to when you see a guy like Todd who – prior to going to the Ravens, he's working with Stetson Bennett at Georgia.
Right.
They win 2 national championships. He could be, stylistically, probably could not be farther from Lamar Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
And then you go to Baltimore. Now, he had said in his press conference when he came in that he took that job in particular because he thought it was his best path to get to be a head coach because if I can make Lamar Jackson be able to throw the ball successfully when other teams know we need to throw the ball, then that will be my calling card. And you look at his first season MVP, second season, 4,100 yards, 41 touchdowns, 4 picks. That's the best passing season he's ever had.
No question.
That, to me, gives me some hope here with the Browns that Stetson Bennett and Lamar Jackson couldn't be different, and and you got the best out of both of them.
Yeah, no, and that's the key. You have to play to your quarterback. I think look, I've always been a believer, and I'm sure I was told this years and years ago, but whoever told me it resonated, is teams tell you coaches tell you what they think of their quarterback, both good and bad, by what they ask the quarterback to do.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, no coach is going to ask a quarterback to do things that they don't feel he can do, and no coach is going to ask a quarterback to do things that they know the quarterback is uncomfortable doing. So, because what a lot of teams do is, and you probably know this, Nathan, is a lot of teams, maybe it's a Saturday night or whatever, the quarterback and the offensive coordinator get together, and, if you have a veteran quarterback, you pretty much say, hey, is there anything in this game plan you don't like, you're not comfortable with? And, the quarterback might say, oh, these 3 plays just I'm not feeling it, then you take him out.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're not going to call a play in a critical situation that the quarterback is uncomfortable running.
There was a great Peter King article that he did. He was embedded with Carson Palmer and Bruce Arians
with
Arizona and went through that exact process. So basically, like, the opening script is all Carson.
Right.
What he said, these are the things that I really want to get in there, and they work, and if he doesn't want it, of course it's out. What was crazy about that article is actually for a week to prep against us, the Browns.
Yeah, I think I remember. I don't remember the details of it, but I remember
it was
the
just
article.
it's to your point, exactly, and then you watch some of the things they're talking about here, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that came to life against us in a way that was great for Arizona and not so great for us. I'm like, but yeah, that's the magic.
So I mean, ultimately, like I said, we don't know specifically what he's going to do, but we also know that probably David Njoku might not be a Brown, right? He's a free agent. So I don't know who the next tight end is after Fannin. So it might be a case where they end up, playing more out of 11 personnel. Now, granted, they might need some wideouts. We'll see how, hey, we're end of February. We don't know the answer to these questions. Free agency and the draft haven't happened yet. But I would think that he would like to play more. And when I say 11 personnel, I don't mean spread. Everybody immediately thinks spread because the game has changed where even teams that play a lot of 11, there's a lot of reduced formations. There's a lot of pre-snap movement. It's not spread the way people think, oh, you're playing with 3 wide receivers, the field spread out. That's not necessarily the case.
When you look at in some of the trends of the league, and one of the things you mentioned that 11 personnel, where sometimes now you're using receivers as blockers and doing that. What do they call it? Those kind of the insert.
The insert. The Rams are big on that.
Yeah, and then you get Puka Nacua running through the B gap all of a sudden,
and then he runs a route.
And runs a route.
Yeah,
and people can. Our touchdown. It's funny. Our touchdown against the Patriots. On the opening drive, Harold Fannin was lined up in the backfield and did an insert, ends up running a corner route. We run a scheme wide open, and then the Seahawks.
It was going from right to left, right?
Yep.
I remember it.
And the Seahawks basically copied it for the touchdown to A.J. Barner in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. But that insert, is that one of the trends? And I don't know if the DC that you were with touched on that at all.
He did, because it's funny, he did. He talked about the issue that you have when you play a team, and he talked about the Rams, because obviously the Rams are one of the more difficult offenses to defend for multiple reasons. But now you get stuck because very often they put Nacua in that kind of that kind of what we call Zin motion, Zin motion, and so now that impacts your front because now you don't want him to get a free release, so sometimes you take your D end and you actually move him further inside, and then you have edge setting problems, and then they run outside zone against you, and you don't so it becomes cat and mouse, a chess match. But a lot of teams are doing more of that. It's funny. I remember seeing that, and I did a piece in my NFL matchup show. I don't know. This was 6, 7, 8 years ago, where Kyle Shanahan did that with George Kittle, and at the time, it was like, oh, my God, you almost never, ever see that. He took Kittle, put him in motion. He ran in between the guard and the tackle and then ran across the field and was wide open because the defense didn't quite pick it up because he released from a different spot, something you're not really sure. And we did the piece and matchup, but I'm going back like 6, 7, 8 years, and now it's become pretty much a part of what a lot of teams do. Teams do it with backs now, too. And it becomes really difficult to defend.
It stresses linebackers. They don't know who they're responsible for if it turns into a pass.
Yeah, it's one of those things, too. Like, you feel like everything would be done by now in the NFL. And then every year you see something, and there's a variation. Like Andy's great at this; he grabs something from years ago and inserts it.
It's a tweak, It's not like a whole shit. No, but all he did was end up running a crosser. It's not like he ran a route, because there's not 1,000 routes. It's not like you've never seen the route. It's just how you get to them,
how you applied it.
Yeah.
And these guys just keep coming up with new ones. It's fascinating.
When you think about kind of the evolution of the chess match, and I know you do such a great job of the match, and you love that, and you get into it. Do you think the average NFL fan would just be shocked at how much goes into a game plan and how much, if somebody motions from 1 into 3, how much of that changes and the calculations and the switches that need to be made on a defense to react to that in a split second? Really how
some would,
masterful it all is?
I think some would, for sure, because none of this stuff – look, obviously not everything on either side of the ball with coaches works all the time. I mean, I had this conversation, like I said, with the DC yesterday, and he said, hey, when the game's over and I'm like, it's 3-4 hours later, I always look back on the game and I think, hey, there's 5 or 6 things I just would have done totally differently. That's human nature.
Of course.
Yeah. So if a fan hurt, obviously coaches don't say that necessarily, but some fans would think, oh, he got out-coached. It has nothing to do with that. I mean, it's there's so many elements to this. There's so many moving parts. It's just a difficult, which is why, it's funny. We were just talking kind of organically. I remember when I first read, because I read it when it came out, I read Moneyball.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm a big baseball fan. I'm sure you guys are too, with your team.
Yeah.
I was going to say the Indians, but they're the Guardians.
That's right.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. And so I read Moneyball, and then I thought to myself, I spent the next month, because it was the summer. That's when I, read it. The next, month trying to figure out if it applied to football. And again, not that I'm, the expert on it by any means.
Who's in our building.
Well, I know.
For a lot of years.
We tried to apply that to football.
And I just didn't feel that it truly applied because you're talking about 22 moving pieces on every play where baseball is a static game.
That's right.
And again, not that I said anything profound or I'm smarter than anybody else, but I just couldn't figure out how you could apply that in a really meaningful way because there's so many moving parts on every play.
You can't have the predictive nature, and then we see the shifts in the way people play. It's a completely different sport from that I remembered, growing up playing or even watching.
Well, I was a baseball guy growing up because I played it. Because I'm older, a lot of younger people have no idea that in the late 60s, early 70s, when I was in my formative years, that the 2 biggest sports in the United States were baseball and boxing.
Correct.
So. I grew up, a hardcore baseball guy. I mean, I went to high school.
You're talking over there, Tom Seaver. I heard you were dropping a Tom Seaver.
Yeah.
That was your guy.
Look, I grew up in Queens, New York City, basically. Not a lot of high schools had football.
Right.
So I didn't play football. I played baseball and basketball. But that's back in the day, So anyway, I just didn't feel like with 22 moving parts on every play that you could isolate it like that,
Because you can't.
Yeah, you can't.
It can help you with salary cap movement and structuring deals.
And I'm not saying there's no place for it, but I don't think that the game can be built around that.
Yeah. It's too fast.
Yeah.
And there's too many variables.
Too many variables.
Yeah. That's why it's the best.
I know you're early on in your processes, but for us, 3 picks in the top 40. Nathan and I were weapons guys, always are. You're doing some preliminary stuff on this wide receiver class.
I've done 12 guys.
What do you think of who you've seen?
I think that a lot of these receivers will be in the eye of the beholder because there's no Jamar Chase in this class. There's nobody like that. And again, having said that, that doesn't mean receivers won't be taken high because with this not being a quarterback class, a quarterback draft, you're going to get guys, that are pushed up just because they're not going to be pushed down because there's no quarterbacks to push them down.
Right.
So I'm just going by my evaluation of the players, Nathan knows me. I don't do lists. I don't do mock drafts. I have. Hey, maybe 3 receivers get drafted in the top 15. I don't know, but I don't see it in a normal world. I don't see receivers in this draft really being like top 10 players.
Okay.
But if I had to pick one guy that I liked the best, I'd probably say Carnell Tate.
Yep.
I think he's, to me, the guy that's likely to be the safest and the best of the group. Whether he's a quote unquote one, I don't know. But I think he's a good player. After that, I think you're in the eye of the beholder. I mean, I think guys have positives and guys have weaknesses. And look, we live in a time when quarterbacks throw the ball a lot. If you're in the right scheme, a guy can catch a lot of balls. I mean, look at Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, he was a 4th-round pick. I think pretty much most people thought he was drafted where he should have been drafted.
Right.
And now he went to, a Ben Johnson offense, which is one of the best in the league as far as route concepts and route spacing and all those good things that make pass offenses work. And he's turned out to be a high volume target who's a really good receiver.
Yeah.
So could that happen with one of these guys depending on where they go and how they're deployed? Absolutely. But I think if you look at their traits, you don't come away going, oh man, this guy, he's absolutely a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
What did you think of Jackson Smith-Njigba a few years back, and what's made him be so darn good?
What I loved, and don't forget, he didn't play his last year because he got hurt after, like a game?
Couple games,
yeah. Yeah. He was one of those guys that had just rare quickness in and out of breaks. Just, you just watch him, and, man, he could snap it off. He was sudden.
Yeah.
Now, did I think he'd become this? No. But he definitely had that trait that was really evident on film, that he could just snap it in and out of breaks, and that was his sort of superpower. And in the league, that's what it is. You got to be able to separate.
Yeah.
And he could do that. And, he's got enough speed and enough understanding of running routes that he can get over the top, but you probably wouldn't call him a true vertical player.
Yeah.
But he can do that.
Yeah, he makes big plays.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Tom Brady, I don't know if you caught the commentary. Brady was doing one of their games, and he said, as a quarterback, what you loved about him is ability to create separation, but as a cornerback, the reason he put people in such stress is that his shoulders were always level, and so that they couldn't get any read on which direction he wanted to go, and then you combine that uncertainty with his ability to snap it off, as you said, and then all of a sudden he's leading the league.
You are 100% right. I mean, that's exactly right. It's funny that we're talking organically. I remember years and years ago when I used to do a ton of interviews for NFL Films, I was interviewing Chris McAllister.
The corner from Arizona.
Yeah. And Jimmy Smith, the wide receiver for Jacksonville, came up, and he said he's the toughest receiver for me to play against because every part of his stem until literally the very end looks exactly the same. So you have no idea what route he's running. And then so you're almost reactive to what he does.
Right,
because
then you're beaten.
Yeah, then you're beaten.
Yeah.
Right.
We talk about Seattle, and we've talked about this off air, but it does feel like what they did, certainly what Philly did, maybe another path to build, not that it's any easier, but perhaps another path to kind of build a contender in terms of great defense, really solid offensive line play, massive weapon in Jackson Smith-Njigba, and then Sam Darnold, when it came time, went toe-to-toe with Stafford twice in the second half within 4 weeks, and went toe-to-toe and got it done when he needed to, and then they obviously overwhelmed. Is in a copycat league, will we see teams saying, man, can we pull that off? My hunch is we will, but I think it's maybe more difficult than people realize.
Well, it is. I've never been a blueprint guy. Because I think that's such a function of personnel. Like, for instance, there's not 30 Nick Emanwaris. You're dealing with a 6'3 and an eighth, 220-pound safety who ran a 4.38 at the combine. He essentially was a Sam linebacker for them, but he has traits that go well beyond a Sam linebacker. But, so you can't just take any guy and say, well, you know what, we're going to play him like Nick. It's like Caleb Downs in this draft. I think Caleb Downs is a really good prospect, but he's not Nick Emanwari. He's, I spoke to a Midwest scout who I know, and he told me he'll probably be like 5'11 and a half, 197, 198. And I think he's a really good player.
He's a great player.
Yeah. But, the two players that came to mind as I was finishing my work on Caleb Downs were Budda Baker and Antoine Winfield. I think he's kind of like that.
Sign me up.
Which is nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's just a different player.
Yeah. So, I mean.
He's not Kyle Hamilton. He's not Derwin James.
No, he's not. So. I think you have to have the right players, and don't forget, the one area where I think you might see, I don't know, a trend, for want of a better term, is the D-tackle position. And I'll tell you why. Because more and more teams are playing 4 across.
Yeah.
So what that means is, and we're not going to go in the weeds here because people are, can't see. It's not like we're showing plays.
Right.
But now your D tackles become so important in the run game because you're not adding that extra player into your gaps. A safety, you're not playing single high where there's a safety in the box.
Right.
He takes care of a gap. So now your defensive tackles have to become what a lot of coaches call gap and a half players. You've probably heard that term.
Yep, sure.
So when you look at the teams that were in the Final Four this year, they all had big-time D-tackle starters and rotational players.
Keep them fresh.
Because you had obviously the Seahawks had Byron Murphy and Leonard Williams.
Right.
Even I know the Patriots lost, but they had Christian Barmore and Milton Williams.
Yep.
Who
was
on
the Eagles and was great for the Eagles when they did win the Super Bowl.
Right. So I mean, again, just potentially, I'm not going to sit here and say that's the way that the league's going for sure. But if you're going to play more 4 across, you need those tackles to be really good in the run game.
Well, and that's for us. You think about our last 2 drafts. The first player taken in either of those drafts 2 years ago was Mike Hall in the 2nd round.
And Mason Graham.
So we need those guys to go.
Right.
Because that's critically important. We play 4 across. That's a big thing for us.
Right.
We got great play from Malik Collins. Now he's coming back from an injury. But, yeah, kind of talking with him, though, a little bit about trends as he was saying, what do we learn from a guy like Malik Willis, who's going to be the most talked about quarterback at this combine? Mendoza's going 1, that's a given, and then we can get into if there are guys that you would like from a toolsy perspective. But what do we learn from a Malik Willis who had a lot of tools, gets with Matt LaFleur, hasn't started a lot, but is going to be the hottest free agent, obviously, in the league at that position?
Because it's a bad draft for quarterbacks. Right. Well, it's funny you mention that. I sort of I'm on my own little crusade here about the discussion of quarterback traits, because what you keep hearing is he's got great traits, and 99.9% of the time, what do people mean by that? It means that he can throw it
Size
hard,
and arm.
and he can run.
Yeah.
Now, the NFL is playing at a high level at the quarterback position. That's not the reason you play at a high level.
Yeah.
Is it nice to have a big arm? Look, Matthew Stafford has a gun. That's great.
Yeah.
But the quarterback position is so much more about the details of it, the nuance of it, the subtleties. It's a disciplined craft. It's, and no one talks about that. And, that's one reason Mendoza is such an interesting guy, and I like him a lot, is because he's not in that conversation of, oh, man, he's so toolsy, because he kind of plays the game a little old school, the way we sort of have stepped away from in talking about it, but he plays it. I could totally understand why Tom Brady loves him.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, because he kind of plays it like that. And I'm not going to sit here and say he's Tom Brady, but I'm talking stylistically.
Sure.
Yeah. How he wins.
Right.
From the pocket with his mind.
Right.
Yeah.
But no one talks about that when they talk about quarterback traits. They talk about big arm. Oh, he's got great arm talent. And man, he can run around. He's a great athlete. Well, that's not necessarily why guys are good quarterbacks.
Sure.
Well, think about it. Like, as you're talking, if Drew Brees just showed up here at the NFL Combine,
right?
How would he even be talked about here today? Because his best trait is something that you can't necessarily see. It was between the ears, right? It's not measurable. But he would not.
But you know what? It becomes measurable by the way he plays.
You see it.
So even though you're not in his brain, like with some piece of equipment that measures brain power, the way he plays tells you that he has tremendous brain power.
For sure.
I was going to ask you. You mentioned Malik Willis. Kyler could be available. Tua could be available. Mac Jones could be available.
Right.
Of that group, and a lot of what you said is because maybe this draft didn't have what a lot of people a year ago thought that it would have in terms of the top-end quarterback.
Right.
Of those guys, is there anything that's intriguing in a new scenery?
Don't forget, now you're dealing with guys. First of all, there's not many transcendent players. I'm a big believer in coaching. I think everybody needs to be coached, and then you get into schemes. And, just to give you an example, if you talk about Drake May with the Patriots and then let's say the Kyle Shanahan approach, which Mac Jones played in this year, you're talking about two totally different ways that the position is taught.
Yep.
In the Kyle Shanahan offense, the play caller is the star.
That's right.
And you were there when Kyle was there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. In the Josh McDaniels offense, he gives the quarterback all the answers to the test, and then the quarterback has to figure out in the game which answers apply in a given situation. Whereas Kyle, the quarterback, the play call is the answer to the test.
Kyle's going to boil it down and say, I'm going to design this so well that all you have to do is watch this guy. And if he goes here, you throw it there.
Right.
If he goes there, you throw it here.
That's it.
Yeah, the play caller's the star.
Right.
And you talk to any coach. I mean, this DC I spoke to yesterday just said Kyle's the best there is. And I've had that conversation with many coaches. Maybe 49er fans don't agree because they haven't won a Super Bowl, but that's the way defensive coaches in the league feel.
That's how they think.
That's how they think.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, too. And a part of this, though, is as you're looking at maybe quote reclamations.
Right.
Darnold spent time with Kyle.
Right.
And then is with Kevin O'Connell. Daniel Jones said that he learned so much with being with Kevin O'Connell. Malik's now been with Matt LaFleur.
Right.
Baker was with Sean McVay and credited that kind of helping him.
That's
get
why
going.
Malik is to get back to your original question.
Sure.
Malik's a very difficult guy to figure out what he could be because the most he's ever thrown a ball in a game was 23 passes in his rookie year in Tennessee when he clearly wasn't ready to play. And, if you're a starter and you're a 17-game starter, at the end of the day, he's going to have games where he's got to drop back 35, 40 times.
Right.
100%.
We have no idea. If anybody says they know the answer to that, they don't know the answer to that.
Is Drew Allers, we just jumped to
Wow.
later round, a guy that, you think about last year, if he plays well against Notre Dame,
Yep.
maybe he comes out, he goes top. Maybe he's a Cleveland Brown, honestly. Maybe he's taken early in that draft. Now you can get him maybe at a discount. What do you think of just for him, not to get into tools, but size, arm, all of those
Drew
things?
Aller is going to be a function of a coach thinking that he can turn him into a good player because he's 6'4", 240. There's many throws during the season that you go, wow, that's pretty incredible. But my sense is that he doesn't see it real well, that it has to be really well defined.
Yep.
And, it just – there's too many times where I feel like not seeing it, he ends up checking it down or making an easy throw, and it just doesn't process the way it should process. And, again, I'm not in his head, so I don't know what he's seeing or what he's thinking.
He's taught, right.
But I think that's there are certain quarterbacks that end up being, for whatever reason, risk averse. Like Derek Carr was always a great example of that. Derek Carr is risk averse because if it's all laid out perfectly, man, does he look good throwing a football. If it's not laid out perfectly, he checks it down. And at some point in this league, as we all know, you got to turn it loose.
Yep.
Is there a quarterback that maybe third, fourth that you kind of think?
This is not a good quarterback draft. Are there quarterback? Now you get into how coaches look at a guy and how you can coach him. Like I think Taylon Green from Arkansas, and he's a project, no question.
Yeah.
But I think that somebody's going to look at him and think, in 3 years, if I can coach him for 3 years,
Yeah.
and that maybe you can,
Still
maybe
here.
you can't.
Yeah.
But if you can coach him, maybe in 3 years I got something.
That's a tough part of the development, right? Because
Yes.
if you're still coaching 3 years later, that means you're probably winning, which means maybe you don't even need that guy to be
Correct.
the quarterback.
Correct.
And if you were counting on that guy in 3 years, you might not make it.
It pulls at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
both sides.
It's, I don't know. I happen to think Ty Simpson's the most intriguing quarterback in this class. And he has things that clearly need to be cleaned up and worked out, and he's only a one-year starter. And I would never suggest he's ready to start week 1, but I think he has starting traits. And when I say starting traits, I don't mean we're going to start talking about him with Josh Allen and, those guys.
Yeah.
But I think he could be a quality starter. I heard a coach tell me this while I was here that you'll be surprised. He's bigger than you think he is. And, and he made – look, Alabama ran – NFL route. I mean, you saw him make throws that you go, those are NFL throws.
Oh, yeah.
These are not checkdowns or quick little hitches. These are NFL throws.
Is there a Tyler Shuck in this draft? Because that was a guy that you liked last year, and boy, over the second half of the season, he started cooking.
Nobody, again, I need to see more. Like I keep being told about the North Dakota State guy who I haven't seen.
Okay.
Cole Payton, I guess it is.
Uh-huh.
And he's a lefty, so I haven't seen him at all. Because I've tried to watch guys that I knew I was going to get asked about, like the top guys. I've watched the Baines, the Baileys, the Ohio State defensive guys. So I've seen more of those guys. I've seen 3 safeties, Downs, McNeil Warren from Toledo, and A.J. Halsey from LSU. So I haven't seen as many quarterbacks as I normally would have. Like if it was a big quarterback year,
then you'd have
I
them
would have
all,
watched 7 guys before I got here.
Yeah. It's just not.
It's not those guys.
No, it's not.
This
Sir,
is too fun.
best.
Now I know how you spent 3.5 hours. It just
It
just flies by.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Great
that
to
was
see
great.
you.
That
Mr.
was so much
Cosell.
fun. Yeah.